Welcome to this week's episode of Dylan's vlog and podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, this is going to be an exciting episode for you as I'm talking about a topic that I have struggled with over the years as an entrepreneur. And it's only through COVID in particular that I learned how to really take advantage of something that I had pushed back on before. And I'm excited to share my thoughts with you. Hopefully, you're having a great week. I am having a great week, as I shared last week on the last week's episode. We've added a new company to our portfolio and have hired an individual who's now building a team around the idea. And this is the week when they're starting to kind of put the wheels on the bus, as it were. And so it's been very exciting to be a part of that, to see it come together. It is for our on-demand labor program, and so we've got a dedicated president who has agreed to take on the position, and he is now building out his administrative team, or just his team, not even administrative, just his team of people that he's going to be using to hit the goals and the milestones that we've put in place to really bring this idea into the marketplace. So some of the things I'm learning as I go through this experience is I've never handed off an idea to an individual and have never asked them to run with it. And so my strategy for doing that right now successfully is just to be transparent and honest. So prior to jumping on this vlog and podcast, I had a conversation and I said, hey, it's going to sound awkward as we kind of develop our rhythm. I'm the guy that started the business with our family a bunch of months ago, and we have a certain way of doing it. But I know that in order for this idea to really get some legs and run, I need to be able to support you. So bear with me as I figure out how to have these types of conversations where I feel like I have all this knowledge and these ideas in my head, and I'm going to be looking to really support what you're doing as opposed to just have you execute on what I would like to see happen. And so it's been interesting. It's interesting to watch something that has some life in it, that is producing results, be handed to somebody else in hopes that they are able to do significantly more with it than what we could have done on our own. So that's been very, very, very exciting. And stay tuned, because I'm going to talk about it probably every week and share with you some of my challenges, because maybe as an entrepreneur, you're thinking to yourself, man, running a business is not, I don't want to be here forever. Again, you think about that cash flow quadrant. Our business is in growth mode, but I really would like to step over the line into the next quadrant where I'm investing. And it sounds like what Dylan's doing, he's trying to figure it out. So I'm just going to listen to what he's doing, because if I can hire someone to run my business, then that would give me the opportunity to maybe do some other things that I'm interested in. And I could invest in other ideas. I could invest in other businesses. I could invest maybe in myself, whatever that particular box on the quadrant means for you. So I will share these thoughts. I am nervous, but I'm also very excited. And the very first thing I'm already discovering in watching somebody else take what I have done and run with it is the context in which they bring. When you live and breathe a business for so long, you see things a certain way, and you have a bias that is baked in to every conversation you have and every decision that you make. And so having to transcribe all of that to somebody else who has the authority to make their own decisions has been interesting for me, because I'm discovering that maybe there were some blind spots, which might sound obvious, but there were some blind spots that I hadn't been considering. And so so far I've enjoyed the conversations during this handoff, and I'm excited to see ultimately what happens with it. So if you're tuning in for the first time, if you're like, who's this Dylan guy? I don't even know what he's all about. I am an entrepreneur. I have been I've been supporting entrepreneurs for decades, but in the past decade have built out my own portfolio of businesses. I've made all the mistakes, or rather many of the mistakes. I'm still making mistakes. I think that's what makes all of this very meaningful and enjoyable. And I share my thoughts weekly on a podcast and a vlog in hopes that an entrepreneur is able to realize that they're not alone at some of the thinking that they might have in their head, because there aren't easy outlets for an entrepreneur to explain themselves to other people, that maybe in some of the things that I say, they can associate with it and realize they're not crazy. But on the other end, it's also to meet other business owners and entrepreneurs. And that has been an incredible amount of fun, because there are people that I have now come to know that we get talking about their businesses, and it's a lot of fun. I get to share some of my experience in the things that I've learned. I'm getting to learn about other people's businesses and trying to figure out how can I take what they're doing at a concept level and incorporate it into what I'm doing. So I do this because I enjoy hearing myself talk. I want to share what I'm learning so that others might benefit from it, but then also, more importantly, connect with entrepreneurs and build a bit of a community. The basis of what I do is really based around the cash flow quadrant. That was something I introduced a couple months ago to kind of anchor what I talk about. And it's you can visit on my blog or my website and kind of get a handle on it. But it's basically the four quadrants that I've helped move businesses through, and it has served me really, really well. And so when I jump on this vlog and podcast every week, I try to talk about something in that quadrant and make it relevant to an everyday entrepreneur running their business. So the folks that I generally hear from are entrepreneurs running their businesses. They might not still be signing the checks, but they certainly are making decisions every day about what's going on in the business. And those are the entrepreneurs I seem to connect the most with, because that happens to be the position I'm in. I'm not involved in the day-to-day activities of our portfolio, but I am involved in the leadership and the management and setting the strategy, making sure that our teams have everything they need to be as productive as they possibly can be. And that's a management philosophy. In fact, I was just a couple hours ago meeting with another construction company, an individual who actively works, manages, and owns the business with another partner, and they are in it. They haven't figured out a way to get to a pure management level. They are directing their teams every day, and they have a job in essence. But the goal, of course, is to put yourself in a position where you can use your time to do high value activity, and that's what I've been focused on in the last year, maybe two. So right on the back of that conversation I was hoping to have today was to share about your customer avatar, or your perfect customer, or who is your perfect customer. Now, these are things that over the years I've read about. I know that as I've listened to other entrepreneurs talk, successful entrepreneurs, they have always said that you absolutely must know who your customer is. And I've always thought to myself, well, everyone's my customer. I mean, this is the product or the service that we have. And so therefore, like, everyone in the market needs what it is we do. So everyone's my customer. And what I've learned in particular through COVID, because in both of our businesses, we had to make some pretty significant adjustments to who we service. Coming up with who that customer is, that customer profile, that customer avatar, has been a lifesaver. And it's not only changed our financial results, but it has changed how our team comes to work and enjoys what they do. So let's kind of set the context. As a business owner, I used to think, because this is the product or the service that I offer, everyone is my customer. The entire market, I can go after everyone in the market. And that's true. However, the more focused that you can be in understanding exactly who your customer is, the better an opportunity you have to be more profitable, to make higher margins, to have a better work culture, to have a team that enjoys what they do. And so the example I'll give is I got my start in mortgages. In particular, funding commercial mortgages and syndicating them. So a developer would need $1 million. I would break it into 10 pieces. I'd find 10 investors at $100,000 each and fund the deal. Then I decided, you know what, let's get into residential mortgages, because I have my license. I can sponsor mortgage agents or mortgage associates in the marketplace. So let's go do residential mortgages. And then I would think to myself, okay, houses, townhouses, condominiums, industrial, commercial bays, commercial warehouses. We can go broker financing for anyone and everyone. We're a broker. And then through trial and error, and not because there was any specific intent behind the decision, we just started realizing that we became very good at working with individuals who were self-employed, who maybe didn't have all their bookkeeping together the way it needed to be, and we could service those customers really well. Contrast that against someone who maybe had a 9-to-5 job. They'd been at their place of employment for a bunch of years. They got the same paycheck every 2 weeks. With those particular customers, we didn't figure out how to add a lot of value to the relationship. So what would happen is, with that kind of customer, we would spend a lot of time servicing them, and we became a very successful brokerage, one of the largest independent brokerages in the country, in fact, at that time, non-franchised. And those customers would walk across the street if they could get a slightly better rate of interest. And that was because we really didn't compete. We didn't have we didn't have anything great to compete on. There was nothing holding them captive to us because guess what? We weren't the only mortgage brokerage in the city, in our province, that thought they could service everybody. However, when it came to working with self employed individuals, not only did they not shop us, they didn't walk across the street for a different rate, they were just simply excited and engaged in somebody understanding their challenges, their problems. We solved those problems and challenges, and they were loyal to the end. We would do multiple mortgages for them. And the truth was, we would be more profitable from a margin perspective on the self employed type borrower than we were with the fully employed, no real problems or challenges to fix. You just need to get them the best rate. Now you might be listening to this and go, Dylan, I'm an entrepreneur and I get it, right? Your lowest margin customers are your biggest pain in the rear end. They're just not worth it. And you got to find a way to go after the customers that don't push back on your pricing, that don't have a problem with your margins or your markups, and yada, yada, yada. I was one of those guys too, who in concept understood it, but didn't really put it into practice. And so if you fast forward now, we go into COVID, and in one of our businesses, we had relied on about 80% of our revenue to come from a couple of key customers, big fleet customers, as a matter of fact. So because they're fleet customers, they had to get preferential pricing. And wouldn't you know, because they were fleet customers, every time we had to interact with them, there was a lot of bureaucracy and approvals that we had to go through. And so we spent an enormous amount of time servicing them. But the logic was they're fleet customers, they're big, they're going to survive COVID, so let's make sure to overservice them. And it turned out not to be true. Those fleet customers ended up having challenges with their own volumes of how much business they were doing, which meant it affected how much business we were doing. So I made the very specific decision to say, hang on a second, which fleet customers do we want to keep, as determined by how much work are we putting in, how frustrating is it, do they grind away at our pricing, and let's let go of anyone who does all of those things. And let's backfill that hole with individual owner operators. So these are individuals that might run a small pool of equipment, maybe one piece of equipment or a few pieces of equipment, but not a fleet of it. And so over COVID, we figured out how to do that really well. Wouldn't you know, better pricing, better margins, but most importantly, happy customers. They were so happy with the level of service that we could give them because there aren't a lot of options for that type of customer in our marketplace, and the options that they have aren't really great ones. They walk into our business and it just clicks. So we were able to replace almost 50% of that 80 with a very new type of customer, and it has dynamically changed the business. Insofar as now we're trying to figure out how do we grow, how do we go service more of those customers. And again, I share this because as an entrepreneur, I've known this. In my head, I have known this. As I move through the cash flow quadrant from struggling to adjusting to growing, I would say that one of the common themes through all of those three quadrants is knowing exactly who your customer is. In a perfect world, if the perfect customer walked through the door, what would they look like? What would they be prepared to pay? But most importantly, why would they be prepared to pay it? Why would they spend that money with your business instead of all of the competitors? And at first, I couldn't articulate this. I wasn't able to answer those very simple questions because I didn't understand the specific value that we were offering as a business. And through trial and error and advertising and cold calling and doing all of the things that a business does to try and grow, we ended up discovering that this is exactly the kind of customer that we are best suited for. So what that enabled, all of a sudden, everything became clear. Now we could run specific offers to get them in the door. The offers that we were offering them meant nothing to fleet customers, zero, nilch, nothing. But to our customer, that very specific offer we made to them brought them in the door. And as it turned out, they didn't even take advantage of the offer. The offer was really just to get them in. And once they were in, our environment, our staff, the way they were treated, the ability to feel like they were, that they meant something. They weren't just another number. They weren't just another Visa charge. Really resonates with them. And then the ability to do work and not necessarily charge them for it went a long way as well. The example I give there is I have had lawyers who charge me every single time I talk to them. And so over time, the lawyers that I would use are the ones that don't nickel and dime me for every little phone call or every thought they had about me. And again, that's because I'm that customer. And so for some lawyers, I'm a good customer. For other lawyers, I'm a terrible customer. I ask way too many questions. Um, anyway, I won't go down that that rabbit hole. There's a lot of reasons for that. But in my own business, in our own businesses, I've realized that the better you can articulate who your product or service is best made for, that will produce that type of customer. But the magic is once you've figured that out, it all of a sudden answers every other question as well. What kind of sales strategy should we have? What kind of marketing strategy should we have? What kind of follow-up strategy should we have? How do we retain clients? How do we ask for referrals? Knowing who your customer is, the very specific profile, unlocks a whole bunch of other stuff. And so, just to recap, for me, I used to think our product, our service, big market, we can service everybody. I've since learned that the better I understand how our particular product or service is solving a very specific problem in a very big marketplace, it then helps me understand who is our ideal customer. And if we can find our ideal customer, then that means we're able to earn a good margin, provide a great experience, and answer all of the other questions that pop up in our business. So if you're an entrepreneur right now and you're really struggling, and some of the things have resonated with you, some of the things that I've said, then I would encourage you to sit down and figure out why do people use us? That answer is going to be the same for every other business in your industry. So, okay, we provide a widget. Great. Lots of companies provide a widget. But why does a customer come to us for this particular widget? Well, I don't know. That's where you got to start. The better you can answer that question, and I don't think it happens in a single session, or at least for me it didn't. It took months of marketing and sales and pushing and pulling and really trying to get down to that answer to discover what it was. But then once you discover what it is, it's amazing. So if that sounds like you're like, yeah, I don't know, we provide a product. This is what we do, and it's great, and people are awesome. Okay, well, great. But the better you can define it, the easier everything else becomes. And I should mention the other thing that happened on the back of this is because we were able to attract better customers, or a customer that better fit our business, right? Trying to right size for who we are. We were also able to attract a team of people that were better suited to service our type of customers. So said a different way, we used to have kind of a mishmash of people servicing a mishmash of businesses and somehow squeaking out a few dollars. As soon as we really figured out who our customer was, it became apparent that some people on our team were just not a good fit for servicing that type of customer. So we were able to change them out and bring in other team members who were really suited well to service that type of customer. And all of a sudden, it's not a mishmash of people servicing a mishmash of customers. It's a very specific type of team member servicing a very specific type of customer. And now when we go to hire, we're not just hoping anybody comes in, because over these last bunch of podcast episodes, you've heard me talk about labor and how difficult it is and how difficult it will probably continue to be. That now that we know exactly who we need on our team, because we know exactly the type of customer that we're looking to service, everything works out well. And then you get the additional benefit of now you've created a culture where you have like-minded people working inside of the business, and it all just sort of works. So if you feel like the pieces are frustrating in your business, or you're trying to do too much, or you're trying to service everyone because you're nervous about making payroll or making money, I can tell you that the more effort you can put into understanding exactly who your profile of customer is, the easier everything else becomes. So that's what I wanted to share. Just became apparent to me as I was kind of out and about doing my thing in this past week, that knowing who your customer is, understanding your customer avatar, the perfect profile, the picture, the individual, the attributes, the characteristics, all the stuff. This is exactly who we get up every day to service. The better you can do that, the better you'll find everything else in your business is going to be working. And I felt that was valuable. Now, if you type in customer avatar in Google, or how to profile my perfect customer, you're going to find lots of resources. So I don't have one particular resource that I like over another. I just know that the more effort I've spent into defining who our customer is, the better the business on a whole has become. Profitability, culture, hiring, selling, marketing, all of that seems to come together really well when you know exactly who your customer is. And so I would encourage you to do that today if you haven't. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I do consulting as well. So if you're an entrepreneur and you just want someone to kind of hack around your business and give you some opinions or give you some thoughts or kind of help you understand where you are on the cash flow quadrant and kind of what strategies you need to move to the next part of the cash flow quadrant, I'd be more than happy to help. Look me up via email. LinkedIn, Twitter is kind of where I hang out, as well as YouTube. But I'd love to connect with you, learn about your business, see if there's something I can add to your business. But in turn, I also enjoy hearing about other people's businesses, real businesses, and what they're doing out there in the marketplace, because I'm an avid learner and I like to see. I just like to have my blind spots opened up so I can hear and see what other people are doing. So if you liked the episode, rate it, share it, subscribe, do whatever you need to do to make sure it gets in front of other people. But let's find a way to connect. And I trust that you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week.